Welcome to the North American Standard Motorcoach Inspection Level 1 training program. The program is designed to review proper procedures for inspecting a motorcoach Level 1 in accordance with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations and the North American Standard Motorcoach Inspection Procedures. Some states may have different procedures and requirements. However, this training will be of great value in understanding proper inspection procedures and guidelines regardless of your particular state requirements. The objective of this training program is to describe the process for planning and conducting a motorcoach inspection for a destination, en route, and terminal inspection. We're using the suggested 3-person inspection team, which includes a team leader, a front-end inspector, and a rear-end inspector. If there are fewer inspectors, the inspection process should closely parallel the procedures of a 3-person inspection team. In this program, we will identify the special equipment, tools, and safety items necessary for inspecting motor coaches. We'll explain the applicability of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, or FMCSRs, for different types of passenger operations. This program will also identify the mechanical and component difference between a truck and motor coach and describe the proper location to place the CVSA decal. The 4 major parts of the inspection process include 1. Pre-inspection planning, 2. Conducting the inspection, 3. Documenting the inspection, 4. Applying the CVSA decal or placing the motor coach driver out of service. It is critical to identify motor carriers for the purpose of identifying unsafe motor carriers. Inspection Preparation Step 1. Let's take a look at the very important pre-inspection planning process. Before a motor coach inspection can occur, extensive planning must be completed. The pre-inspection planning process will vary slightly depending upon the type of inspection. Planning is generally the team leader's responsibility, and there are certain key elements of the planning process that will always be performed regardless of the type of inspection. Generally, the 3 types of inspections include the en route inspection, terminal inspection, and destination inspection. The en route inspection greatly impacts passengers and can be a disadvantage because of space and other considerations. The terminal inspection is most desirable as it offers the best access to the vehicle's undercarriage. For our purpose, we'll concentrate on the destination inspection, as this is the most commonly performed inspection. It's desired because there is generally several hours layover, which provides sufficient time to provide needed repairs if any are required. Destination inspections generally involve a motor coach with passengers offloaded and are typically performed at a major tourist attraction, theme park, or similar destinations. Rarely will passenger schedules be impacted, unless the motor coach is placed out of service and the carrier has trouble resolving the problem. With proper planning, the destination inspection can be performed with virtually no impact to the passengers. The pre-inspection process is important to understand that planning is a critical part of the inspection process. A planning checklist will identify the level of inspection, the identity of the inspection site, with special considerations for safety, passengers, proper facilities for the inspection, lighting, and proper equipment. The planning process includes scheduling adequate personnel for the inspection, overnight accommodations as required, location of fixed and mobile repair facilities, and prepare disclaimers. There are written authorization requirements from owners, operators, and from private property owners. Another part of the planning process is working with the media. Let's face it, the media is a fact of life and we're part of the process. Good media relations are essential to the success of the inspection program. Abrupt or curt treatment of media representatives will surely result in unfavorable reports. At the inspection site, media representatives should be treated courteously, but should be effectively managed. Safety during the inspection begins in the planning process. Safety must be the most important consideration at all times. Safety of inspectors, driver, passengers, the public, and the motor coach. Safety is much more than just wearing proper protective gear or setting up safety cones. It's an attitude. People are injured when they become complacent and believe they cannot be hurt. Being safe means you must be aware at all times that anything can go wrong. Be prepared to recognize potential hazards and make sure the hazards are reduced or eliminated. Safety is an attitude. Inspection preparation is a critical part of the inspection process. Let's now continue the process with the other important inspection steps. Greet and prepare the driver and passengers, step 2. The team leader boards the motor coach and makes the initial contact with the driver. The team leader determines whether the driver and vehicle are subject to the regulations. Since January 1995, private motor carriers of passengers, with a few exceptions, are subject to the regulations. If passengers are present, address them, explaining the purpose of the inspection and how it will be conducted. Distribute any printed material explaining the inspection process. If ramps are to be used, explain how they will affect the motor coach. Observe the driver's overall condition for illness, fatigue, or signs of impairment. Check for seatbelt usage and condition. Check for illegal presence of alcohol, drugs, radar detector, weapons, or other contraband. While the team leader is on the motor coach conducting his or her inspection steps 3 through 11, the front and rear inspectors are outside conducting steps 12 through 17. Collect driver's documents, step 3. The team leader collects the following documents: driver's license, medical examiner's certificate and waiver if applicable, record of duty status, documentation of periodic inspections. Other documents include trip information such as tour itinerary, trip envelope, and charter order. Interview the driver, step 4. As the motor coach approaches, the team leader begins to gather the preliminary information such as the company name, DOT number, and license plate. The team leader engages the driver in conversation about his or her trip, where the trip started, motor coach destination, how long he or she has been traveling, last stop, and if there are any hazardous materials on board, if he or she has been inspected on the way, and if there have been any problems. Identify the carrier, step 5. The proper identification of the carrier performing the transportation is essential and requires the team leader's careful examination of the documents and questioning the driver. The name of the carrier displayed on the motor coach may be different than the operating carrier. Most of the time, the driver is an employee of the operating carrier, so check his or her record of duty status and inquire for whom he or she is driving. If the coach is in scheduled service and there is a discrepancy in company names, the team leader should also ask the driver about a possible interline agreement. Examine commercial driver's license, step 6. The team leader inspects the commercial driver's license. All drivers should have a properly endorsed CDL. Be sure to check the expiration date and birth date. The inspector must verify the appropriate passenger endorsement and driver's license for the appropriate class of license through usual channels. Check for multiple licenses. Check medical examiner certificate, step 7. All drivers for hire motor carriers of passengers must possess a medical examiner certificate. Effective January 1, 1995, all drivers for business private motor carriers of passengers must also have a medical certificate. Check dates to ensure documents are current and signed by a medical examiner. Certificate and waiver are valid for 24 months, unless otherwise specified. Check record of duty status, step 8. Inspecting the record of duty status by the team leader has many responsibilities. If the driver claims to be a 100 air mile radius driver, check that he or she meets all 5 criteria for this exemption. Effective January 1, 1995, a driver who drives for a private non-business motor carrier of passengers does not require a written record of duty status, but must still comply with the hours of service requirements. Interview the driver to obtain information on current day's activities, previous day's activities, and the activities of the last 7 days. Also examine any trip documents such as fuel receipts and others which may help verify compliance. If the driver meets neither of these exemptions, check his or her record of duty status, first noting time and date of last entry. Check for violations of the 10-hour rule. Is the driver in violation at the time of the inspection? Next, check for violations of the 15-hour rule. Is the driver in violation at the time of the inspection? Part-time drivers must account for on-duty time as any compensated work for non-motor carrier and motor carrier entities. Check for violations of the 60-70-hour rule. Is the driver in violation at the time of the inspection? Examine fuel receipts and compare dates, times, and locations with those listed in the logbook. Examine any other documents that can be compared with the logbook. Check distance traveled against driving time. Average miles per hour must be realistic. Check sample mileages between locations identified on the log. Question the driver about any discrepancies. Determine if the logbook is accurate. Check the logbook form and manner and required entries. The logbook must be legible and in the driver's own handwriting. The full 24 hours must be recorded and each day dated. The vehicle number or state and license number for each vehicle operated during that 24-hour period must be logged. The name or names of the motor carrier or carriers and main office addresses must be recorded. Inspect the driver's signature on each record to certify that entries are correct. Check for violations of the 10, 15, and 60, 70-hour rules prior to the driver's last 8 hours off duty. Only drivers with motor coaches equipped with sleeper berths may enter sleeper berth times. Follow the established regulatory criteria to examine sleeper berth time recordings. Review vehicle inspection status, Step 9. The team leader determines that the vehicle has the federal annual required inspection in the last 12 months and has documentation for the necessary decal. There are several state motor coach mandated programs that are accepted for the annual inspection requirements. Check the passenger area, Step 10. Passenger area. The team leader makes sure the standee line is clearly marked and the standee line sign is in clear view of passengers. Inspect the floor area and seats for signs of unserviceability, and the seats are properly secured to the floor. Perform a windows and emergency exit access inspection. Emergency exits are the most difficult to inspect, as you must ensure that not only is there clear access, but that they are adequate. This is of particular concern when a vehicle manufactured as a school bus is being used for commercial purposes. The following information applies only to buses subject to the FMCSRs and not to buses used to transport students under school bus operations. All emergency exits must be marked with clearly legible signs indicating exit and the method to open them. The words emergency door and emergency exit in letters at least 1 inch high, and the emergency door must be identified by a readily visible red electric lamp. Emergency exits and markings must be inspected every 90 days, and records of these inspections must be maintained by the motor carrier. The number and size of exits required depend upon the NHTSA standards as found in the FMCSRs. In-depth training on emergency exits will be provided in other training modules. Check driver's compartment, Step 11. The driver's compartment is also the responsibility of the team leader. Driver's seat must be equipped with a seat belt to be used during vehicle operations. Low air pressure warning device. With the ignition or master switch in the on position, deplete the air supply by pumping the foot valve until the low air pressure warning device activates. Observe the gauges on the dash. The low air pressure warning must activate at the minimum of 1/2 the compressor governor cutout pressure. Steering wheel lash and column. Turn the steering wheel in one direction until the tires just begin to move. Vehicles with power steering require the engine running to turn the wheel. Place a mark on the steering wheel. Hold the marker at that point and turn the wheel in the other direction until the tires again start to move. Measure the distance between the 2 points. The amount of allowable lash varies with the diameter of the steering wheel. Compare that measurement to the out-of-service criteria. Check steering column for secure attachment. Inspect front of motor coach, Step 12. While the team leader has been conducting inspection responsibilities, the front-end inspector inspects the headlamps, turn signals, and emergency flashers. Inspect the windshield and windshield wipers. Make sure the hazard warning signal is working properly. Inspect the combination of lighting devices and reflectors. Inspect the front bumper, cab, and body components. One of the distinct differences on the motor coach is the location of the spare tire. On some designs, it is located in a compartment behind the front bumper. The release for the bumper is typically found inside the steering compartment access on the driver's side of the motor coach. The bumper closure does satisfy the mounting requirements. The frame of the motor coach is called a unibody. There are no frame rails except on vehicles such as school buses or older model motor coaches. The skin of the motor coach is attached to the unibody and supports. Verify the integrity of the frame anytime panels lie on the spare tire compartment are accessed. Look for cracks, holes, and rust, and decide if it compromises the integrity of the motor coach. Inspect rear of motor coach, step 13. The rear of the motor coach presents immediate hazards to the rear inspector. The engine compartment is located at the rear, and the inspector is out of line of sight of the other inspector and driver. It is imperative that communications methods are established so all members of the team are aware of each other's actions. This is especially critical during instances when the motor coach may be started or shut down. Pay special attention to moving parts, hot surfaces, exposed wiring, fluid, fuel, and gaseous leaks. Watch for sharp edges and heavy panel doors. It's a good practice to have one of the other inspectors acting as the safety watch at any time an inspector opens and inspects compartments or the undercarriage. Again, you're inspecting for proper functioning of the turn and stop signals and emergency flashers. This includes the requirements for turn signaling systems and the hazard warning lights. Inspect reflectors and the exhaust system. There are specific requirements for the discharge point of the exhaust system. The intent is to prevent fumes from entering the passenger compartment. Be sure to check for exhaust leaks in the engine compartment. Heavy odors and discoloration are good indicators of a problem. The fuel system is very difficult to inspect on motor coaches. Most of the lines and piping are concealed. As with the exhaust, check for odor and discoloration. Look for signs of deterioration, leaks, and general integrity of the fuel system. Engine performance can also be an indicator of a faulty fuel system. Poor response, combined with odor and increased fuel demand, can indicate a leak. Check the visible lines for leaks and lower panels for accumulation. The wiring is much like the fuel system, concealed. Check the condition of wires that lead through panels. Missing rubber grommets and openings can lead to frayed wires and grounds. Even though the current and amperage through the wiring is not a hazard, it can be surprising, which could lead to other injury or damage. Inspect left side of motor coach, step 14. The front end inspector is also responsible for conducting the left side of the motor coach. There are several access panels along the side of the motor coach. Each one should be opened. They are very heavy and often have sharp corners and edges. Don't assume the supports will hold the panel open and avoid pinch points. Again, we're inspecting the lamps, lighting devices, and reflectors. While the panels are open, inspect the frame as much as possible. The frame can be inspected from inside the baggage compartments. The back compartment rear wall is a primary support member for the engine compartment. Inspect it for cracks, rust, and twisting. During this inspection, check the wheels, rims, and tires for defects and serviceability. The steering system is also checked on the left side. Some of the steering system components can be accessed through a compartment in the coach body. This compartment is usually found on the left side of the vehicle, just forward of the steering axle. Steering access compartment doors are equipped with a readily accessible latch. An extendable mirror and flashlight are helpful when inspecting inside this compartment. Coordinate with the undercarriage inspector and interior inspector to inspect the steering. Be sure to check for frame integrity and wiring condition as well. Inspect right side of motor coach, step 15. The right side is the inspection responsibility of the rear inspector. The same basic inspection techniques apply to the right side inspection as did the left side inspection, including the lamps, lighting devices, and reflectors. The fuel filler cap on an integral motor coach is usually located behind a small access door just to the rear on the right side of the steering axle. The right side frame inspection procedures, cab and body components, and wiring. The tires, wheels, and rims are also inspected. On the right side, there is the battery installation that requires special attention. Inspect the battery area for any loose or unsecured batteries. The battery and main electrical fuse panels can typically be accessed by panels along the right side of the motor coach. Take extreme caution. Battery fluid is a strong acid that can cause burns, and the fumes mixed with oxygen can create an explosive atmosphere. Never allow any sparks or open flames near battery areas. Place inspection ramps, step 16. The placement of the ramps is the responsibility of all team members. Motor coaches have a very low ground clearance, which makes it impossible to safely inspect the undercarriage. Therefore, it is necessary to either raise the motor coach using ramps or a pit. Ramps are the most common way to access the undercarriage because they are portable. Types of ramps. Aluminum ramps are preferred. The primary benefit of aluminum ramps is they are lightweight and portable. Placement of ramps. Placement of ramps is the most critical decision the inspectors must make to ensure the safety of everyone involved with the inspection. There are two common methods of placing the ramps. 1. Raise the entire motor coach using 4 ramps. The obvious advantage to this method is that the entire undercarriage can be accessed without having to move the motor coach again. This enables the inspector to complete the undercarriage inspection efficiently without having to come out from under the motor coach until completed. Unfortunately, it is the most difficult method because it requires all 4 ramps to be perfectly aligned. This alignment means the motor coach must rest on the top and center of the ramps. If the coach is not centered on all 4 ramps, there is a risk a wheel or entire side of the motor coach could slip off and drop, endangering anyone under or near the motor coach. 2. Raise the front for inspection, then the rear. This ramp procedure uses 2 to 4 ramps placed so only one end of the motor coach is lifted at one time. Once the inspector has completed the undercarriage inspection on the front end, the driver moves the motor coach forward over the ramps to lift the rear end. The advantages to this method are the safety of having to align only 2 ramps, and for the inspectors to only carry 2 ramps. Many inspectors actually find the 2-ramp method more efficient because it takes less time to align the ramps and get the motor coach raised. There is an obvious advantage in the peace of mind created for the inspectors and the driver moving the motor coach using the 2-ramp method. Inspect the undercarriage, Step 17. The undercarriage is inspected by both the front and rear inspectors. Both inspectors should inform the team leader that they are going under the motor coach and to be alert for your instructions. Safety considerations for the undercarriage inspection. Some drivers may not be thoroughly familiar with the vehicle they are operating or with driving onto ramps. Therefore, caution and patience must be exercised when coaching drivers onto the ramps. This is particularly true with manual transmission vehicles. Inspection personnel should stand well clear of the motor coach and the ramps until the motor coach is safely raised. Wheel chocks on the front and rear axle must be in place before starting the inspection. Use a flat, level inspection surface. Even the slightest grade can cause the motor coach to roll over the chocks, especially if it is equipped with flexible radial tires. Never get underneath a motor coach while the engine is running, except to inspect the exhaust system. Clear communications must be established between the inspectors and the driver, and never get underneath a motor coach resting on jacks or blocks. Wear eye protection, bump caps, and other appropriate protective clothing as necessary during the inspection. Stay clear of moving parts, and avoid quick and straining movements while inspecting the vehicle. Avoid being in a position that failure of a pressurized or spring assembly component could cause injury. Be cautious around brakes and air compressor lines, as they operate at high temperatures. Never smoke during the inspection. On the steering system, check for loose, worn, bent, damaged, or missing parts. Instruct the driver to rock the steering wheel and check key components such as the front axle beam, gearbox, PITMAN arm, drag link, and tie rod ends. Be sure to rock all components rigorously. Excessive amounts of lubricant can disguise worn, cracked, and loose parts. Front suspension. Most motor coaches are equipped with air ride suspensions. Failures of a suspension system are not likely to occur. However, the inspector should take extreme caution when reaching into component areas. Do not strain or wedge any part of your body in between suspension components in an attempt to reach or see parts. When checking the front suspension, check for misalignment, shifted or cracked components. Inspect for missing bolts. Check for air leaks around the airbags. Check for cracked or loose U-bolts. You may find insecure axle position parts, such as radius, torque rods, or other parts. You may find signs of axle misalignment. You may not be able to see a hidden part of the listed critical vehicle inspection items, but the CVSA allows the provision to issue a decal if no violation is detected during a Level 1 inspection due to a hidden part. Brakes. The primary difference in the brake system of many motor coaches is the use of a DD3 safety activator brake chamber. The DD3 safety actuator is a double diaphragm brake actuator with 3 functions: service braking, emergency braking, and parking. The DD3 features a mechanical roller locking mechanism for parking and is used extensively on transit and intercity buses. Because of its unique locking roller mechanism, the DD3 requires the use of special control valves such as the TR2 inversion valve. Various piping configurations have been designed to meet specific vehicle applications. The DD3 is available in Type 24 and Type 30 sizes and are readily identified by 3 lines or ports. It is a long stroke brake, so check the CVS out-of-service criteria for the allowable stroke. Check for missing, malfunctioning, loose, contaminated, or cracked parts on the braking system. This could include drums, rotors, pads, linings, chambers, chamber mountings, push rods, and slack adjusters. Be sure and check for S-cam flipover. Be alert for audible air leaks around the brake components and lines. Inspect the push rod travel. With the brakes released, mark the brake chamber push rods at the point where the push rod exits the chamber. While the brakes are applied, measure the distance of the push rod travel at each chamber. Compare the measurement to out-of-service criteria for the appropriate type and size of brake chamber. Check for any air loss rate. The frame. The engine cradle will resemble the frame system on a truck. Look closely at the mounting of the cradle to the motor coach and the engine to the cradle. Failure of these mounts may constitute failure of the frame and should be checked against the out-of-service criteria. Continue with the inspection, checking the cab and body components and the brake tubing and hose and the adequacy of such tubing and hoses, as well as all brake connections. Exhaust system. On a gasoline-powered motor coach, the exhaust must discharge at or within 6 inches forward of the rearmost part of the motor coach. Diesel-powered motor coach's exhaust must discharge at or within 15 inches from the rearmost part of the motor coach or to the rear of all doors and windows designed to be open, except windows designed to be opened solely as emergency exits. Fuel tank. The fuel tank is often not visible. It is concealed by a belly pan to protect it from damage. Check for leaks and signs of fuel on the surface and around the belly pan. This could indicate problems with the fuel tank. Check for the integrity of all fuel lines. Drive shaft. Drive shafts are necessarily short and are too difficult to inspect. Check for securement of the guard bracket. A drive shaft passing through a frame member constitutes a guard bracket. Air loss rate, Step 18. This is the team leader's responsibility. But if any team member hears an air leak at any point in the inspection, you should now check the vehicle's air loss rate. Have the driver run the engine at idle. Observe the air reservoir pressure gauge on the dash. Have the driver pump the pressure down to 80 psi. At about 80 psi, instruct the driver to make a full brake application. Check the air pressure gauge. Air pressure should be maintained or increased. A drop in pressure indicates a serious air leak in the brake system and the vehicle should be placed out of service. Presence of hazardous materials, Step 19. All team members check for the presence of hazardous materials. The team leader checks any shipping papers for hazardous materials. Check passenger area for any packages bearing hazardous materials labels. The front and rear inspectors check the baggage compartment for packages bearing hazardous materials labels. Motor coaches transporting hazardous materials are subject to the same regulations as a truck, plus additional restrictions. Unless one of the team members is certified in hazardous materials inspection, do not attempt to enforce hazardous materials rules. Complete the inspection, Step 20. The team leader completes the inspection forms and other paperwork as required. Record the time that the inspection ended. Check the out-of-service criteria to determine if the driver or vehicle is out of service, and note that information on the inspection form. If the driver is out of service, determine when he or she may drive again. Explain to the driver any violations found, and return documents to the driver. Direct the driver to drive carefully off the ramps and stop at the designated place. Take appropriate enforcement action, Step 21. It is the team leader's responsibility to refer to the applicable standards contained within the North American Uniform Out-of-Service criteria when placing a motor coach or driver out of service. Inform the driver of the reasons for the out-of-service action. If the motor coach has passengers on board, inform them of the following. The motor coach is being placed out of service. The reason for the action. Facilities available during the waiting period. Safety instructions while out of the motor coach. Arrangements for passenger transportation, which is the responsibility of the bus driver or carrier. The team leader monitors each motor coach placed out of service to ensure that arrangements have been made by the bus carrier or driver from prompt repairs or replacement motor coach. Apply CVSA decal, step 22. If the vehicle passed the inspection, apply a CVSA decal in the appropriate location according to guidelines. The team leader applies the CVSA decal properly according to the CVSA guidelines, which state the CVSA decal is placed on the glass portion of the passenger door as close to the inspector's eye level as possible. Documentation summary. There is an old saying that is still true today. If you didn't document it properly, you didn't do it. It is imperative that violations be documented clearly. Correctly document all violations that are found during your motor coach inspections. Indicate whether or not they are out-of-service violations. It's a good practice to identify all of the inspectors who participated in the inspection on the inspection forms. This should also make it easier to verify inspector qualifications. If the motor coach passes the inspection, then you may issue a CVSA decal. Passes the inspection means that during a Level 1 inspection, no defects are found of the following critical vehicle inspection items: brake system, coupling devices, exhaust system, frame, fuel system, turn signals, stop lamps, tail lamps, headlamps, steering mechanism, suspension, tires, wheels, rims, windshield wipers, and emergency exits. For the purpose of decal issuance, if no violation is detected during a Level 1 inspection due to a hidden part of the listed critical vehicle inspection items, a decal shall be applied. Out of service. Certainly there are many consequences of not placing a motor coach out of service, none of which are good. Let's now take a quick look at placing a motor coach driver or vehicle out of service, which can be accomplished smoothly with proper planning. Inform the driver of the motor coach and carrier of the reasons for the out-of-service action. Provide a prepared list of known mobile repair facilities and/or replacement motor coach carriers located in the area if the driver-operator is unable to make or obtain the necessary repairs. If the motor coach is located on private property, written permission from the property owner is required. If the motor coach has passengers on board, inform them of the following. 1. Explain the out-of-service situations and what mechanical and/or driver defects are out of service. Explain how these defects relate to passenger safety. 2. Elaborate on the facilities that are available to the passengers, where the passengers can wait and how long they may have to wait. 3. Provide safety instructions to the passengers while they are out of the vehicle. Explain what other traffic is in the area and where to walk or not walk. 4. The driver explains how repairs and/or replacement motor coach and/or driver will be arranged. Continue to monitor each motor coach placed out of service to ensure that the carrier or driver has made arrangements for prompt repairs or a replacement motor coach. As we stated in the beginning of this program, planning is an important part of the inspection process. The more planning you do, the greater the success of the inspection. Your friendly attitude will make the inspection much easier to accomplish. Safety for inspectors, the driver, and passengers must always be a first consideration. Actual conduct of the inspection is based upon safety and the experience of the inspectors, in addition to following proper regulations and procedures. Documenting the inspection clearly and thoroughly will save time, effort, and contradictions. Documentation is an important part of any inspection process. Issuance of the CVSA decal or placing the motor coach or driver out of service is a result of your findings during the inspection. It's a big responsibility. It's a serious responsibility that requires professionalism and competent performance of your duties. Thank you for taking an interest in the safe transportation of passengers by motor coach. You are part of the safety solution. The Federal Highway Administration would like to afford special thanks to the Texas Department of Public Safety for their assistance in developing this program.